Fora TV. The world is thinking.
The biggest upset is that if the basic institution of early democracy is the assembly, where people gather as equals to decide whether they will go to war, who will get what, when, and how, then the origins of this basic invention of the assembly is undoubtedly Syrian Mesopotamian. The grand irony for me is that this is contemporary Syria, Iraq, and Iran. The archaeological evidence, thanks to a Danish archaeologist, Torkild Jacobsen, makes it clear that these assemblies formed from at least 2500 BCE. And they're partly transported to the east, to what is today Pakistan and India, and partly through to the west, through Phoenicia, for example, into the Greek world, where the Greeks have the audacity to claim the assembly as their own invention. If you read Aristotle, that's the feeling that develops. The book here, I think, makes an attempt, however crude, to include the early 4 centuries of Islam into the history of democracy. This caused some controversy among reviewers, and actually, for me, sorted out Orientalists from those more enlightened. But if you think about what happened, and you will read this in all the textbooks, after the collapse of Republican Rome and the rise of the Roman Empire and the defeat of the Roman Empire, what happened between then and, say, the American and French revolutions, the standard history, and even today the doyen of political thinkers in the United States, Bob Dahl, say nothing happened effectively for over 1,000 years. Nothing. So it was kind of the dark ages of democracy. Completely, the Greek invention was forgotten. The assembly fell into disarray, and it had to be reinvented somewhere in Europe. And then depends where you date it. Well, my view is that that's, factually very misleading, and it's misleading for a number of reasons, including the fact that if you look at the birth of Islam, if you look at Muslim civilizations and the empire that developed very quickly, you will see that there were several striking things. Islam was dead opposed to kingship, to monarchy. What kind of polity, what kind of distribution of power was appropriate, based, for example, on the Quran, was unclear. And you may know that among the first caliphs, at least 3 were assassinated, because the question of who gets what, when, and how was an open, live question. The point I'm making here is that, contrary to the view, which was a late 18th, 19th, and well into the 20th century view that Islam is a kind of dark Oriental disaster when it comes to democracy, actually the first 4 centuries look very different. And if you look at inventions like the mosque, think about it, was a public space, rather carried on the tradition of the assemblies of the region, a space where men and women could go as equals, where there were markets. Wine was even sold in many mosques during these first 4 centuries, the record has it. And people gathered, of course, to pray. They also gathered when they were in bereavement. They gathered on hot nights. They brought their animals there to water. It was a safe place. They were well lit, but it was also a place where political speeches were given. And the mosque is, in this sense, bound up with these early assemblies that are part of the region, and hence their inclusion.